Julia Yaffe is the Washington correspondent for Puck and one of the country's best journalists on U.S.-Russia relations. Also with us is Democratic Congressman Eugene Vindman of Virginia, who previously served on the National Security Council. I think we all share a ban on going to Russia. I think all of us are probably on that list, so there's that. But let me start with you, Julia. I just noted kind of some of the pushback that we're seeing from European leaders. I don't want to overstate what it means, and that's important. But I do want to get a sense from you about kind of the global politics here. I mean, what are the global politics for some of these leaders, and why do you see them stating the opposite of what the United States president is stating?
Well, because the U.S. president just took and flipped the U.S. from the column of democracies to the column of autocracies. If you just look at the UN vote today, we voted with North Korea, Iran, Russia, Belarus, like you said, not champions of democracy. We had the U.S. trying to meddle in German elections, putting our thumb on the scale of the German elections for the AfD, which is, frankly, a neo-Nazi party.
Which didn't work.
Which didn't work, for now.
For now.
And we have the U.S. president on the side of Russia in negotiations, as he's calling them, to end the war in Ukraine. Of course, it's not negotiations. It's not the art of the deal to just give away the store to one side in the negotiations. Anybody could do that, and President Biden could have done that and prevented the war as well. But the reason you're seeing that pushback is the U.S. isn't leading that camp anymore. The U.S. is with the bad guys now. The U.S. is with the fascists now. And so these are the people who are tasked to lead the free world, because we sure as hell are not doing it anymore.
I mentioned, which is such, we're not sitting at the lead of the table anymore, which is a real change. I mean, that is not a political change. Let me ask you, Congressman, I mean, you're a Ukrainian American, of course, and you've spoken out about all of these issues. I mean, the defense secretary refused to say over the weekend that Russia started the war. That is ludicrous and crazy. It's something that is a Russian Kremlin talking point. It's something that Putin would probably say. There is some pushback. We're stating the facts here. But how impactful is it that you have the president of the United States, people in his cabinet, some of these people like Elon Musk oversee massive platforms. What is the impact of that type of message and disinformation that they're spreading?
Well, you got to remember that the sole reason all of these people are in his cabinet is not because they're competent, capable, they have experience, they've ever managed anything. It's loyalty. It's blind loyalty. They would never be selected as manager of a McDonald's as opposed to a Secretary of Defense. So I think it's laughable. And so what they're doing is they know that their job depends on pleasing their boss. There's only one person that they actually have to listen to and abide, and it's Donald Trump. And it's shameful. It's not in accordance with our values, and it's a hard turn towards dictatorships and autocracies, away from what this country has always stood for.
There's no question. I mean, Julie, let me ask you a similar question, because I feel like, again, we know what the facts are, and it feels very obvious. These are the facts. Russia started the war. But you've covered and you've watched. I mean, this spread of disinformation happens here in the United States. It happens globally. Now you have the leader of the free world basically touting inaccurate information about this war. I mean, what is the impact, and what can people even do to push back?
Well, I mean, this is a president who, I mean, things that seem obvious to us, right? January 6th was an attack on democracy, an attack on the Capitol. It was the most live-streamed, televised, photographed event that probably any of us have seen, right? Everybody was there with their cameras out. Everybody was saying, I'm doing this, I'm attacking the Capitol. And he says, no, they were peaceful. No, it was an inside job. And what, a third, half of the country now believes him. Mm-hmm. So things that are obvious don't get to stay obvious for long. Mm-hmm. And they become incredibly politicized and divisive just because one side says so. As for Ukraine, I think anybody who has studied history, who has studied these types of leaders, knows that if you don't feed scalps to the tiger and in order to get him to stop. Like, it's not going to sate his appetite for scalps.
He just wants more scalps.
He wants more scalps. And Stalin could have told you this about Hitler. He signed a non-aggression pact with him in 1939. And Hitler invaded 2 years later, because that you don't make deals with these kinds of guys. These deals don't last long. They're not worth the paper they're written on.
Let me ask you, because you wrote this very thoughtful piece about the firing of generals and the purging of people in the military. One of the challenges right now is there's so many stories. It's almost like things don't get enough attention. That's why we're trying to talk about a lot of these things. There's history here in terms of what the impact is of firing qualified people in the military and filling it with political loyalists, as Julia said. Tell me what you think, and what are you most worried about here?
Well, look, it's simple. He fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff because he is a black man. Mm-hmm. He fired the director of naval operations because she was a woman. He also, Hegseth also fired his senior military aide, a lieutenant general who was a woman. Mm-hmm. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to purge folks that have quality, that have achieved their positions through decades of hard work, experience, every position, and they're replacing them with yes men and folks that will not challenge them. And the firing of the lawyers, the head lawyers, is actually in some ways the most disturbing thing, because those lawyers are tasked with interpreting the Constitution and letting their commanders, letting the civilian and military leaders know that these are the lawful parameters, these are constitutional parameters, and you can't cross this line. And he's eliminated that. And so who is he going to bring in behind him? That's why the question I asked was, it's not a request, may I please have this information? We have a role in Congress, an oversight role, and I am demanding that they provide answers to why they fired qualified, capable individuals that are serving in apolitical roles, and what are their criteria for hiring the replacements? That's what I want to know.
Congressman Vindman, Julia Yaffe, this is such an important piece. I'm going to talk about the JAGs, as you referenced a little bit later. I'm going to talk to General Hertling about it, too. And it's a story I hope people pay close attention to. So you know, and it's so important to understand what they do.